Welcome back to the Metal Exchange. Justin and Chris back again, episode 210, where we go all the way to Finland, covering Nightwish's Endless Forms, Most Beautiful, back from 2015. But before we talk all things Nightwish, how are you, my friend?
I guess this means we didn't get that Firehouse interview we were hoping for, huh?
Yeah, unfortunately we did not, although we do have an interview coming up in the not-so-distant future, so I look forward to that. But no Firehouse interview this week, and spoiler, no Nightwish interview this week either. But nonetheless,
that we know of.
That we know of. I mean, time can change. But that being said, we're going to cover the album that you had picked some time ago before you kind of interjected and cut yourself off with your pick, but well deserved and well understood. But again, before we talk about Nightwish, how was your week, and did anything kind of strike your ear?
Yeah, I've been trying to focus more on listening to music, especially considering that I've had a good amount of free time, and I've been filling it playing Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom, which I think I had mentioned before, maybe on a bonus episode, I don't remember, but the music is very understated and almost inaudible at times, which makes it the perfect game to just blast heavy metal while playing. So that's what I've been doing is when I'm finished working, I pop on the games and I just listen to new singles, new albums, old Nightwish albums for the podcast, things of that nature. Couple of things I wanted to mention. The Sunburst released another single from their upcoming Manifesto album called From the Cradle to the Grave. Another solid track. I think this is going to be a big hit with a lot of people when the album drops. So looking forward to that. Did you get a chance to listen to the new song?
I did not, but I was very, very happy with the first single, and I was a huge fan of that debut album. So I will be checking that out, and I have very high expectations for this album. I don't know that it's going to be my album of the year or anything like that, but I do expect this to really resonate with me. And for somebody that kind of moved away a little bit from power metal, I think this is in that vein, and it's certainly that which I've heard so far sounds really good, so I'm excited.
Same here, especially if that first album is any indication. The other thing that kind of came across of my desktop today was a track by the band All for Metal, which is a German/Italian group of musicians. They have one full-length album called Legends that was released last year, and they have a new single called Valkyries in the Sky, and it features the vocal stylings of Laura Goldemond from Burning Witches, and also features Mr. Tim Hansen, son of Kai Hansen, from the band Induction, who we've mentioned in the past. It's a really catchy tune, just kind of like fun, traditional heavy metal with a little bit of a symphonic element to it. I really like this, so I don't know if they have another full-length album coming, but if so, this is a good start. Very cool stuff from them. And then I guess the other thing I'll mention is that I missed the last New Horizon single, King of Kings, and now there's a third single from their upcoming album, Conquerors, called Apollo. Incredibly different subject matter. King of Kings, not about Triple H, but more about Jesus, a real swell guy, if you recall, and then Apollo is literally about the space launch, Apollo. So yeah, two very different subject matters.
Are you sure it's not about Apollo Creed?
It could be about Apollo Crews also. So that way, Triple H and Apollo Crews, very different ends of the spectrum as far as success in the pro wrestling world go. But New Horizon just really reaching out to their pro wrestling roots on this one. I think we had mentioned that Nils Mullen from Amaranth and Dynasty will be doing the vocals on this album. I can't remember if he was their singer on the previous album. I thought you had told me that he was not. But that's another album I'm looking forward to. Good stuff from them. And I got a chance to listen to the new Elvalon album today, which is called Ascending in Synergy. And I like this one quite a bit. It really kind of reminded me of older Nightwish, but with like more current Nightwish vocal style, if that makes sense. Like older Nightwish music with current Nightwish vocals, which I would imagine a lot of people wished the last album or two sounded like, which makes for the good timing considering what we're discussing today. But I like this a lot, and it's definitely high on my quarter 2 list currently after just one listen, and I had to listen to the singles a bunch of times as well. So yeah, that's what I'm going to mention. So keeping myself up to date for a change.
I will go back to New Horizon for a second. Their original vocalist was Eric Gronwall from, formerly of Skid Row, formerly of Heat. And that is an album with big shoes to fill. That album
not
was
Sunday
fantastic.
Night Heat, right?
No. I mean, then you'd be going back to, although I guess it would make sense given Triple H, but no, this New Horizon album is fantastic. Or I should say the single that I heard was fantastic. The first album was fantastic. This is another album I'm really looking forward to. I did not hear the new single. I look forward to listening to that, but this is one I've kind of had penciled on the calendar for a while, and I have immense expectations for this album. And I listened to the Elvalon album earlier today, and it too was really good for a genre which is a little bit watered down. That symphonic metal style. There's a gluttony of albums in this genre, and some are very good, and some are not as good. This was really good, and it actually was kind of fitting that I listened to this the same week that I was listening to so much Nightwish, because in many ways, this is kind of what I want Nightwish to sound like now. And I feel like they're drifting away from that style. And one could argue that this Endless Forms Most Beautiful is actually the last album that was in this similar style, or at least, kind of tangentially related, and that they've since moved further and further away from that. And much like other bands that kind of deviate from the sound that you like, I don't have a problem with experimentation at all, but I have a little bit of an issue when you almost don't recognize the band. And that's what I feel like I really struggled with the last Nightwish album. I've made no bones about that, but the Elvalon album was fantastic. I thought the vocals were good. I thought the symphonic elements were good, and I'm going to go back to it. Really, really enjoyable listen for sure. And just one other album that I want to mention. You all know JT Miller, the hockey player, who, by the way, I didn't realize how many goals that guy scored after leaving the Rangers. I want to be clear about that. Rangers got rid of him, and now all of a sudden he scores 40 goals a season. Like, I don't know what happened. I'm not talking about him, though. There's a band out of Sweden called J.D. Miller, which is really, really enjoyable. J.D. Miller is like a melodic metal band, kind of in the vein of a Crown or an Eclipse, but they have a little more crunch and a little bit heavier, but they focus on the melody and the hooks. They came out with an album earlier this week called Empyrean, and it's really, really good. It's one of those albums where you just put it on, it's a very easy listen, and the song is kind of just organically gets stuck in your head. I think you're going to enjoy this one immensely.
Then I will listen to it.
Are you familiar with any of their prior stuff, or is this like kind of uncharted waters for you?
No, I've I've definitely heard of JT Miller for sure, but not JD.
Well, then I have a feeling you're really going to like this. And if you've never heard them, then you're in for a real treat. I'll post a track this week, but it's a band that not a lot of people are talking about, but I feel like more people should have on their radar. And I don't know that there's anyone that listens to this podcast that would not enjoy this. It's really accessible stuff.
Good. I always, Crown was such a surprise for me last year, just how high up on the list it ended up being for me. And, so I'm anytime there's something that's in that vein, I just much like we were talking about last week with Firehouse and and hair metal, like that kind of stuff always puts a smile on my face, and so does just good old fashioned melodic metal / hard rock that you just that's just catchy and hooky. That's the kind of stuff that I am happy to listen to.
Yeah, well, this shall be no different. I want a full report after you've had a chance to kind of digest it, hopefully this week. But with that all being said, let's talk some Nightwish. This is an album that was released March 25th of 2015. If I'm not mistaken, I think we saw the first show of that world tour just about 2 weeks after this album was released, like kind of hearing a lot of this stuff premiered live for the first time. But much like it often is, Annette Olson out, Floor Jansen in, and so this is a kind of a change of pace for the band in many ways. Their third singer, obviously, after Tarja had left the band about a decade prior, they had released a pair of albums with Annette Olson. We'd covered Imaginarium in the archives. Obviously, that came out in late 2011, and here we are 4 years later, with Nightwish coming out with their first album with Floor Jansen on vocals. And in many ways, Floor Jansen represents the best of Nightwish. And I say that because she's able to do some of the more operatic stylings of a Tarja, but at the same time sing with the clean style of an Annette Olson. And so in many ways, I think that you could make an argument that she's the perfect singer for this band because she's able to sing the old stuff. And I remember I mentioned that show that we saw in April of 2015, where she sang like Dark Chest of Wonders, like completely out of the blue. And I was like, what the heck is going on? And I was just blown away that her ability to sing some of the old stuff. But she's got such a powerful voice that she does justice to the songs like, Story Time, and obviously the songs on this album. So no doubt she can do it all. But I think my problem with the band is that in many ways, I don't think that they are writing to her talents, at least in more recent memory. They did a better job of it here, but I almost feel like she's underutilized given how powerful and how really fantastic a vocalist she is. Whereas Arjen Lucanson, when he writes the Star One stuff, he really lets her shine, and those vocals kind of take over the parts of the songs that she's singing, where at least here I felt like she took a back seat in spots. But maybe it's just me.
I wonder if that's on purpose, because if she had to go on tour and sing that Arion stuff night after night after night, she might not have a voice anymore. So this might be a way for her to preserve her voice in a live setting and then, still be able to bust out Ghost Love Score and just tear it apart. I don't know. I've heard a lot of people make that comment, and it's just like, I don't really know what this is like, as far as this album goes. I don't really know what else people were expecting. I know that there was like a lot, this was like a very hotly anticipated album because I think a lot of people really liked Imaginarium. I know at least myself and yourself included and friends of mine argue that it might be like our favorite Nightwish album ever. So to follow that up and then to have this new singer who everybody was aware of and saw with the band probably, years before the album came out, she was, playing shows with Nightwish, since 2012. So like, she'd been touring with the band for 3 years by the time this album comes out. So people are excited. I remember how I felt about, like, I was like, holy shit, we're about to get like, Nightwish with this powerful metal singer after, while, I love Annette, but Annette kind of had more of like a pop sensibility, and it worked. I mean, I thought those two albums they did with her were fantastic, but I think that this checked more boxes for a lot of metal fans. And I just think that Floor also just is a little bit more well-rounded than Tarja, as far, like you said, as far as being able to handle different styles. So I would say that there was a lot of anticipation. I remember being so excited just for the first single to drop, just to hear what it was going to sound like, the studio version of Nightwish with Floor and like, and it be new material and be written, for her, not just her singing songs that were meant for Tarja and Annette in the past. So yeah, I feel like there was a wave of really high anticipation, and I feel like it didn't quite hit that high expectation for a lot of people. I'm not one of those people. I'm just going to say, like, I really, really like this album a lot. And I think that makes what followed all the more disappointing for me, because while I don't think Human Nature is a bad album by any stretch of the imagination, but I've said it a million times on this podcast, like, a less than great Nightwish album is going to be disappointing because they have put out a high quality product for so long that something just didn't seem like it hit. And it's one album. There's literally, by the time this episode drops, I think we'll only be days away from the new single that we mentioned last week. So we'll see. I mean, I'm hoping that was kind of more of a blip. But we'll see. As far as this album goes, though, like I said, like, I think this is a really outstanding album, and I have a feeling that we're going to have some contention as we march through this, which is good because it's more fun when we don't agree on everything.
I would remember, and again, I'm not going back that far. I should be clear. I mean, the album came out less than a decade ago. But my initial reaction, I remembered being one of disappointment and thinking to myself, it's good. It's fine. But it wasn't remarkable in many ways. And maybe if Imaginarium hadn't been, for all intents and purposes, a masterpiece, this would have struck a stronger chord with me. But I just felt like they are coming off their best album, in my opinion. So anything short of very good to great was going to be a letdown. And this was merely good. It wasn't bad. It was an easy listen, but it wasn't great. And I shouldn't even say it's an easy listen. There are parts of this album that I actually struggle with. I will say that given the benefit of hindsight and having not listened to this album probably since that tour went, in 2015, I think it's been a while since I've listened to this album. There were things about it that I actually like more with the benefit of hindsight. However, I think it's also because when you look at the pantheon of Nightwish, this album is a little closer to Imaginarium than it is Human Nature. And I think that that's part of the reason why it's, in retrospect, easier to digest. Because Human Nature, to me, was so far off the beaten path that, by contrast, this album reminds you of some of the albums that had come before it. So with that backdrop, I actually enjoyed the album more than I thought I was, given my memory, my perception of the album. But all that said, I thought that when we saw them, and if memory serves, this was a great lineup. This was Delane, Sabaton, and Nightwish. That is a heck of a tour. Each of these bands now headline in their own right. Sabaton plays big venues here in the States, as does Nightwish. But when you think about this show, this material came off fantastic live. And maybe I should have gone back to the album after hearing some of this stuff live. Maybe I did, and for whatever reason, I don't remember it. But, make no mistake that whether you like these songs, whether you think these songs are great or merely pedestrian, they make for a very good live set.
I went and saw them again a week later in Buffalo.
Did you really?
Yeah, because I was planning on going to that show anyway in the first place, and then I happened to be down visiting, and you were like, want to go to Nightwish? And I was like, why the hell not? I'll go a week earlier. And I remember it was fun because, there was no set list. Like you said, this was the first show of this tour. So there was no prepping and seeing what they were going to play. We just stood there and saw what, the band had to offer. And man, they kicked it off with the first track from this album. And that's one of the most fun times I can recall just seeing a concert. I just had so much fun. And then I just remember towards the end when they busted out Stargazers, me and you just just losing our minds. That was such a fun show. And I was so happy to go and see them again a week later. I had no idea this was their first show with Kai Hato, was the drummer from Winter Sun, who replaced Yuka, who was having issues with not narcolepsy, but the opposite, insomnia. So that I really didn't even realize that. But boy, I just remember thinking to myself, like, because I think that was the first time I'd seen the band since they played at Prague Power with the Net, which was like a week before Net was sent packing. And I was absolutely floored, no pun intended, just how good the band was with Troy, being like an official part of it and adding that whole, all the pipes and all the different cool instruments that he plays, like just added a whole new element. It was really such a great show. I have such fond memories of that whole evening, to be honest with you. I remember, like being excited about hearing some of these songs live, in particular the first track, which they opened with. It was just so high energy. But yeah, this really was a I think an amazing time to be, a Nightwish fan. Marco was still in the band. Like, this is like kind of I feel like the glory days of Nightwish, especially when you combine it with that tour they did a couple of years later, where it was like a veritable play the old shit tour, where they just kind of were busting out songs from the, which, bands, especially metal bands, are not really, they don't tend to do stuff like this. Ahem, Camelot, ahem, Symphony X. Like Nightwish is just like, all right, let's play some shit from like Angels Fall First and Oceanborn and Wishmaster. It was just so cool. Like that was so cool. Every band, I think, should bust that tour out like that every now and again. Just keep everybody honest and remember where they came from. But that to me, like, that was such a great period of time to be a Nightwish fan. The band, I think, just gelled so well live. We may not agree 100% on the album per se, but I think live, it's kind of hard to argue that this wasn't like the best era of live Nightwish.
Yeah, well said. I don't really have much to add to that. I agree with you. I'm just going to go into the lineup, and then I think we should just get right into it. Floor Jansen, like I mentioned, on lead vocals, Empu Vornanen on guitars, Marco Haitala on bass, and obviously doing backing vocals and leads in spots. Thomas Haapalainen on keyboards, and Troy Dockley on basically everything else. Every weird instrument on this album, credit to Troy. Heavy on the orchestration, heavy on the ambition in certain spots. Some of these songs kick ass. Some of them lose me, but I think it starts off with a bang. And when I listen to this album and they start really, I guess with one of the most iconic tracks on the album, and that's Shudder Before the Beautiful. To me, this actually felt like where Imaginarium left off. And I say that because if the whole album was like this song or in this vein, I would say it's almost as good, maybe every bit as good as the prior album. But unfortunately, I think it loses me in certain spots. This is a fast-paced tune. It's really heavy and rather melodic. Tons of orchestration, and has this epic start. And to their credit, they actually put Floor front and center on this, pretty much off the bat. And you can see not only the diversity, but the power in her vocals. And they stand out on this track more than many of the tracks on the album. And I'm not really sure if there's a better way to introduce her to the band than there is on this track. The verses are a little bit whimsical in spots, but at the same time, the chorus is just super catchy. I'm a huge fan of the riffs on this one. And when I'm listening to it this week, I just couldn't help but saying to myself, man, maybe I missed the boat on this one. Maybe this album really is super dynamic and fantastic. And I'm not ready to say that. It's between this and one other one for Song of the Week. I'm actually going to go with this one. So for the first time in Metal Exchange podcast history, we're going to listen to my Song of the Week, and I'm not even going to let you speak about the album. When we come back, I want to hear all your thoughts and then some on this track, and then I'll mention later the other track that I kind of had in mind. But yes, here is, without further ado, Shudder Before the Beautiful, and I promise you, Chris, you will get a chance to speak. a complete banger of a tune, "Shudder Before the Beautiful." My song of the week, right off the bat. This track is fantastic. It's Nightwish at its very best, and if they were going to do a best of set, I would want this included because I think this song is phenomenal. Your thoughts?
Oh, I could talk now. Cool. I mean, I don't know that I could really add anything else that you didn't. This is one of my all-time favorite songs from this band. It's in the great legendary history of Nightwish opening albums with banger tracks. Storytime before this. Dark Chest of Wonders, Stargazers, they have a knack for opening up albums with just these anthemic, bombastic, just this is just the orchestrations and the classical elements that mix with the power metal. It's go ahead.
I know you like a song when you struggle for the right adjective to use. So I always know when you're going to hype something up when the adjectives just don't roll off the tongue. And much like this, bombastic, they're just really funny. But no, go on.
Well, I was listening to Shaggy this week, so that word was up the top of my head. It would have been my song of the week had you not chosen it. For the sake of being a little bit different, I'll choose something else. But I mean, this is seriously just such a sick song, and really the only bad thing about it is that it really is hard to follow. A song like this, when you open an album like this, it's all right, well, you got your work cut out for you, because I felt the same way about the Once album by opening with Dark Chest of Wonders. Thankfully later on you get Ghost Love Score, so things do pick up again, but it's just it's tough. I think they do a good job of it on this album, but I will say, I agreed with you when the album first came out. I felt the same way about it. I felt like it just missed the mark, but then I just, for whatever reason, just kept listening to it over and over and over and over, and I just, every time I listened to it, get a little bit better and a little bit better. There were so many nuances that I felt like it needed to be listened to a lot. But when it comes to this track, I was mistaken. I thought this was a single, but my memory was apparently the song leaked, because Elon was the first single that came out before the album, and I remember hearing it and thinking okay, this is a nice song. It's a little bit understated compared to a Shudder Before the Beautiful. It's kind of more of a chill mid-tempo kind of song. It reminded me of when they released their first single with Annette, and it was Ava, a name that you are very familiar with.
I am.
You would think that they would have went with something a little bit more again bombastic, but they went with something very understated, almost maybe it would be more of a showcase for the singer, that the singer is not being overwhelmed by everything else that's going on. But so this was the second song that I heard, and I think it was a leak. I don't know if somebody posted on YouTube or whatever. I played this song repeatedly. I knew this song start to finish before the album ever came out. I was obsessed. I was okay, if this is what we're talking about, okay, I'm on board. I mean, this is just a really great song. I love it a lot, and I can't believe that it's only the first track on the album.
Would you agree everything takes a step back, at least to some degree, after it, though?
Not really.
But that's where you're wrong.
In a certain sense, I don't think that it doesn't have that level of just bangerness to it. That's the banger of the album.
It's like doing a high spot to start the match, and then you're doing rest holds for part of the match. It doesn't. I don't know. It is a phenomenal song, but nothing comes close in my opinion.
Yeah, I see. To me, I think that every song, because it has its own unique kind of flavor to it, and I don't feel like any of the songs sound repetitive. That's fine. That's the power metal beast to open it up, and then songs like Weak Fantasy and Yours Is an Empty Hope are a little bit more Marco driven, a little bit more has kind of a darkness to it. there's other songs that are just straight up like classical music done in a metal style. There's folkiness stuff. There's just so much, a lot of different stuff going on. So I feel like they do not return to something as heavy as this. Although there are parts that are, pretty heavy, especially in that last epic tune and the Endless Forms title track. But I'm with you to a certain extent, that like the album doesn't quite rock like that first track again. Right, but I also think the rest of the tracks are strong in their own right, in their own styles.
Okay, I'll accept that. Talk to me about Weak Fantasy, because like we said, tough act to follow, but Weak Fantasy, bit of a different pace, bit of a different cadence on this. Definitely more mid-paced. I think really this one is kind of driven by the drum work and the guitar riffs. It's deceivingly heavy. It's not quite as fast-paced, not quite as melodic as the prior tune. The verses are quite good. They almost have a storytelling element to them. And there's a bit of an like the instrumental section almost sounds like it's got like a country music vibe to it. It's a little bit weird. Marco has a guest vocal spot. It's a good tune. It's just not as good as his predecessor.
Yeah. To me, like, I'll say it again, like Nightwish without Marco just doesn't make sense to me. And it's songs like this that remind me of why he was such an integral part of the band, not just his vocals, but he wrote the song, or at least partially wrote the song, or co-wrote it with Tuomas. It reminds me a little bit of what they did on Imaginarium with Ghost River being the next track. It's a little bit more mid-tempo, although, Tuomas in an interview said that he thought this was the heaviest song on the album, which I guess, I don't know. I feel like Yours Is an Empty Hope might be more deserving of that title, but I really like this song, and I think that it comes across really well live, especially when like you get to your what I like to call the Troy section, where all of a sudden it just is like all these different like folky instruments and stuff like that, and then like towards the end of the song, like it starts to build back up again with Marco's vocals, and then Floor comes back in. Like this is man, Marco and Floor together, like what a combo! This is such a great tune to showcase the both of them, and it's kind of just like like the best of Nightwish's kind of mid-tempo heavy type track.
All right, like I said, I don't have an issue with the track. I think it's good. I do think that Elon, the third track, is well placed, and I say that just because after a heavy tune like that, you want to kind of take things back a little bit, and so Elon is really your typical Nightwish ballad. I think you really hear the Troy's influence on this track. I mean, they were not really doing songs like this 15 years prior, around the turn of the century. The problem is, even though I enjoy it, I think it's a very good tune, I also wouldn't say it's nothing that you haven't heard from the band on some of the albums that come right before this. So I think it suffers from a little bit of a sameness quality when compared to some other Nightwish tunes. But the chorus, definitely an earworm. It sticks with you. I think the vocals are beautiful, but they just lack a little bit of depth to them. Better than I remember, though. I actually remember not liking this song for some reason, and I don't think I gave it enough credit. I actually enjoyed it more going back to it.
It makes sense, I think, as the first single. I think it's like probably one of the more accessible songs on the album. I think it just has like a really like easy to get into kind of hook to it. I think it's actually kind of towards the bottom of my favorite songs on this album. Although like I think all the songs on this album are great. It's I don't know. I can't listen to it thinking of Amy just singing the entire thing from start to finish. Ask her next time you see her to sing you Elon. She knows every word. Solid tune, cool music video too. And I think just kind of well placed because the first two songs are pretty heavy. So like this kind of calms things down a bit before I think it gets heavy again with the next track.
And I guess to that end, not my favorite ballad because of the reasons you kind of just stated. Not that it's bad; it's good. I enjoy it. But you mentioned Eva earlier. To me, that is basically the same song, just done, almost 10 years prior.
Nightwish has never been my favorite band for ballads, honestly. They're for whatever reason, like it just
Walking in the Air aside, I mean, I think that is a phenomenal ballad, although it certainly picks up on the back half.
Right, and I'm pretty sure that's a cover also.
Oh, no kidding. Okay.
Yeah, so I could be. Yes, it's a Howard Blake cover. He was it was a he had a film called The Snowman starring Ryan Hansen, which includes the song "Walking in the Air." So that was from 1982, actually. So that's where that comes from. So yeah, I mean, I guess it's not really a great rebuttal that their best ballad is a cover, but just my personal opinion, you know me, I'm a ballad guy, but I feel like Nightwish just does a better job with like the bangers, like that first track.
Well, you mentioned Yours is an Empty Hope earlier. Talk to us about the fourth track and your thoughts on this, because they definitely ratchet up the heaviness like we mentioned.
Yeah, this song just has a lot of balls to it. This was the second track they played when we saw them in New York. I thought that was such a great 1-2 punch to open with Shudder and then play Yours is an Empty Hope before kind of digging into the back catalog a little bit. It's also kind of crazy to look back on it and be like, okay, we just saw 6 songs performed live for the first time, which I think is really kind of neat to be a part of that. But again, this is another song with a lot of Marco in it, which is never a bad thing. I remember Amy bringing her up again. Didn't like this song initially. I don't know if it felt too dark or whatever, and then I think it grew on her with time. But I think this is a really, really good tune also. And again, it's just, I think that Thomas just does such a great job with all the orchestrations that are layered throughout this entire album, really. And this song is no exception. I think this album does a really nice job of kind of going back and forth between really kind of almost floaty, kind of folky kind of music like the previous track, and then just really heavy, almost this one has a sense of darkness to it in my opinion. Planet Hell, this song kind of makes me think of another kind of Marco-centric tune that has kind of a darkness to it. But this is another really strong track. I'm racking my brain on what the hell I'm going to pick for Song of the Week. You usurped me before I could even get a word in. So this is a challenge. Thankfully, I don't have to pick an album for next week. Otherwise, my head would explode.
I'll give credit where credit is due. I think the vocals on this are just really powerful, and I think that's one of the high spots for the entire song. Where the song loses me is in that middle instrumental section. It's kind of a I don't know, it almost has an amusement park vibe to it, and I just don't know why they just inserted that in, but at the same time, I think it picks up again nicely afterwards. The track overall, as much as I appreciate the heaviness, and it's not a bad track, it's a bit experimental for my taste. They're kind of mashing some things together to see if it works, and for that reason, I'm not the biggest fan, though if you told me you loved it, I can see the appeal. It's just not for me.
I think the word you were looking for is avant-garde.
Yes, and I think that's a very good phrase, and I would not only just use it for Yours is an Empty Hope, but I'll use it for the next track as well, Our Decades of Sin. This is a bit of a slow starter, and when you first start listening to it, it almost sounds like a piano-laden ballad, but then it starts to pick up, and I never thought much of this tune, but it's actually rather understated and beautiful. About halfway through, the guitars kick in, and it kind of maintains that majestic quality to it. But then all of a sudden, it loses me when the electric guitars kick in. It's kind of like a love-hate thing with this track. If they would have just kept it almost like an acoustic piano ballad, phenomenal. But they went with the electric guitar that I just didn't think was needed. And so the track overall is a bit of a it's a weird track. I like it. There are parts that I absolutely adore, but then there's parts of it that I just didn't think were necessary. So it's almost like a love-hate thing within what's otherwise a relatively short 6.5 minute track.
It's a really emotional song, and I really didn't know this until just now, but apparently this was a ballad for the band's parents. And Tuomas said in an interview that it was maybe the most difficult song to put together because of its delicacy and intimacy, and the band members wept while rehearsing and recording it. So, I mean, it was obviously a very emotional song, and I don't know, I really like this song too. I think that to me, I think it's a better ballad than Elon, although I don't know that it's ballad-y, but like, I don't know, the second half of it, it's like you said, it doesn't really feel like a complete ballad. There's a lot of like strings and orchestral kind of parts to it, and then you have those pipes that really give it like that folky kind of feel to it, which I think is especially towards the back half of the album, there's a lot of that. I really like this song. I love Floor's performance. The way she delivers a song like this, where there's not as much heavy guitars going on, so you can really focus on her. I don't know. I just think this is a really beautiful song. I like this one a lot. It's also Our Decades in the Sun, not Our Decades in Sin, which I think
you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
I think it was, and I think that was, I want to say that was part of like the spoken word at the end of Greatest Show on Earth, which we'll talk about towards the end. But I think that was part of the quote about just that, like, we're lucky to be one of the few that like made it into life when you consider all of the beings that never made it. And like, I think that, I can't remember if it was Richard Dawson, Jesus Christ, let's do the feud. Richard Dawkins or another biologist or writer that, or Darwin, that had that quote, but just saying that like the time that we have on this earth is our decades in the sun. And I thought that was like a really nice sentiment.
I can't argue with that. That is well said.
Off to the bookstore.
Off to the bookstore. My Walden. It's interesting when I hear this song. Obviously, Troy's influence shines through on this track as well, and it just sounds like this jolly fisherman's hymn. I can't explain why, but it's like I want to sit on the edge of a pier, I want to cast my line into the water, and I want to go fishing. I think the verses are rather bland, but the chorus is kind of nice, has this charming quality to it. I feel like this is one of those tracks, though, where Floor is kind of just holding back a bit. And I think of her with some of the stuff we did, even when we reviewed After Forever in the archives. There, she's really belting out some of this stuff. But here, I think she's holding back. I'm not criticizing her vocals. I just think that they should be more, I don't know, prevalent in some of this stuff, because I know she's capable of so much more. But at the same time, the track itself is like oddly therapeutic in a way. It's interesting because the bridge stands out to me. And in many ways, I mean, how many bands are doing pan flute solos and making it work?
Not enough, if you ask me.
Exactly. So really cool instrumental section on this one as well. I like the tune. I just think that it could have been better. It could have been so much more.
I remember not being a huge fan of this song, and going back to it, not really quite sure why I felt that way. Maybe just because just like you said, like it's just kind of like almost jolly. Like it has kind of a jolliness to it. Not the band jolly, but the emotion of jolliness. It has a very Celtic kind of vibe to it, which I think again is the influence of Troy that you mentioned. It's got like a jiggish kind of quality to it. And this is one of those tunes again where like these are the songs I think that really come off well live, because the band is just such consummate musicians that you get to really see, especially Troy, do his thing. It's really fun. So I like this one. It's interesting. Tuomas considers it a continuation of I Want My Tears Back from Imaginarium, which I could definitely see that there's kind of musical themes that connect between the two songs. Although I would argue this one's a little bit more folky.
Yeah,
and it's inspired by the book Walden, written by Henry David Thoreau. Just in case you were wondering where the name came from, not the bookstore.
Well, you could find the bookstore with a book in the bookstore.
If they have a song about Barnes and Noble on the next album, then I'll buy your theory.
Track 7, Endless Forms Most Beautiful, the title track. I'll be honest, if I hadn't chosen Shudder, I would have chosen the title track. I think this song is fantastic. Again, another song, probably the second of which, was really in that Imaginarium vein. It's a fast-paced tune. It's rather heavy, but it maintains that melody, and it just has a ton of orchestration throughout, including what can only be described as just an epic start to this tune. But Floor's vocals on this particular song are just awesome. It's a mid-paced symphonic rocker. It gets pretty heavy, and I think it makes for just a fantastic live tune, and it's much better than I remember it. It's catchy, it's melodic, and it really reminds me, I guess, of more of what Annette was doing before she left in terms of the styles of the song than it does where they would go with Human Nature, and maybe that's why I'm drawn to it. But if I had to choose a second song of the week, this would be it.
Well, I got you covered because it'll be my song of the week. I've always really liked this song. Of all the songs in this album, this was the one that was consistently stuck in my head this week. I remember it was the second single, so I believe there was a lyric video that went along to it. And I'm not a big lyric video guy, but this one was well done because it actually had Floor in it instead of just words. So that instantly makes it a better experience. But I think some of the best orchestrations on the album, it all just comes together. Like you said, it's a little bit more on the mid-tempo side. It doesn't have quite the bite that Shudder Before the Beautiful had, but I think it's a banger just as well. So let's give it a listen. It sounds like if at least we can agree on the two best songs or our two favorite songs on the album, if nothing else. So here's Endless Forms Most Beautiful from the album of the same name by Nightwish.
I am happy that you chose that, if for no other reason than it gives me an opportunity or forces me to listen to it again. So a good choice. We certainly do agree on two of the top albums or tracks on the album. The album gets a little weird from here. The next track, Edamaru, is a bit of a miss for me. I don't know what it is, but I think it's just a little too vanilla, especially in the choruses, which is just a little flat. The chimes that appear in certain spots remind me of like the theme of an 80s TV show. And I don't know why, but they take me out of the song completely. And it also happens to be slightly repetitive with an instrumental section that just doesn't grab me. So for me, it's probably my least favorite song on the album and a rather big swing and a miss.
Would you believe that, especially based on your thoughts, that this was initially considered to be the first single from the album?
Ooh,
and they
glad
ended
they
up
didn't
going
go with it.
Yeah, they ended up Troy and Marco suggested to us that they go with Elon instead. I don't have too much of a problem with this song. The chimes that you mentioned really just kind of remind me of like old school Nightwish, like Tarja era, like kind of some of those songs from Oceanborn and Wishmaster and Century Child, like kind of has that vibe to me. I will say this probably lands towards the bottom of my tracks on this album, but I think that it makes for a good kind of segue track between Endless Forms and Alpenglow, which is a track that I enjoyed quite a bit more than I remembered. But I think this is kind of an okay track. Again, it has kind of a maybe a slower kind of Celtic kind of vibe to it. Definitely another folky tune. But yeah, I don't really have too much to disagree with you on this one. I probably like it a little bit more than you do, but it might be my least favorite song on the album, in all honesty.
Yeah, it's just a miss. I think Alpenglow is better than I remember it as well. It's a step in the right direction, but it's far from perfect. It's a mid-paced tune, has a bit of a story time vibe to it, which is in and of itself not a bad thing, but it's just other than what's otherwise a catchy chorus, it suffers from some of the same repetitive issues that I think Edamaru did. And for that reason, it's better, but it's not perfect. There are some really interesting string arrangements that I do enjoy. I would say it's a pretty good tune, just not outstanding in any way.
It's weird. Like I could have sworn like at least one of these tracks was like an instrumental song, and I don't think any of them are.
The next one is.
Oh, okay, there you go. Like it just, I thought even more though, like it just felt like the instrumental parts were so memorable in the live setting that I kind of forgot that there were actually lyrics involved. But this is a fun track. Another one I think is a blast live. A lot due to like the folkiness again and having Troy and all his pipes and stuff. But I love how at the end of the song, it kind of like quiets down, and then Floor comes back in with this key change that with like 45 seconds to go, and it's just, oh man, it gives me goosebumps. And yeah, we were here. Like it's a really a good tune. There's just a lot. There's a lot going on with these songs, with all the instrumentation and everything, and Floor and Marco, but this is a really nice, I feel like, example of all the different things that make this album great. It's kind of all rolled into this one song. I will kind of agree with you that like it feels like this album is almost like it's pulling from Imaginarium, but it's also pulling from Human Nature, which hasn't happened yet. And it's almost like battle. This one meets in the middle, you know?
Yes, and that's why I think some of it just doesn't resonate with me. The Eyes of Sharbat Gula is the instrumental track that you referenced earlier. It's the 10th track, and it comes before The Greatest Show on Earth, which is nothing short of an epic tune. But The Eyes of Sharbat Sula, or Gula, I should say, screams ballad at the start. And you can appreciate the fact, or I guess you'd say that at some point you kind of expect it to really pick up, but it doesn't pick up so much. It gets a little more epic sounding, but the vocals obviously never appear. And it's kind of ambitious to do a 6-minute instrumental song this deep into the album. What's odd, and this I never noticed before, but as you really get into this song towards the end, it actually gives me Anathema vibes. And if you don't believe me, there are parts of Weather Systems, the album, that sound just like the end of this track. And it's actually remarkable because I don't think anyone's ever compared the two bands, and probably never will again. But if you don't believe me, go listen to the masterpiece that is Weather Systems, and then listen to this instrumental track.
There you go. To me, like this, even though this is a full-length song, it always to me has just felt like the intro to The Greatest Show on Earth, a song that really doesn't need an intro because it's 24 minutes long. But here we are. I think that that's just kind of how it feels for me. So like, I don't really rate it as an individual song. It's just, it's very haunting. You have like the children's choir and it's just very, very, Yeah, haunting is really the best way to put it. This makes me think of Imaginarium in a lot of ways as well. But to me, it really is just setting the table for the next track, which I gotta say, like, it blows my mind that this is a 24-minute song, and maybe because of the way that it's broken up into parts, but it doesn't feel long. And
it doesn't, but it's a 24-minute song for sure. But the last almost 8 minutes is kind of an outro. I mean, the song is really about 16 and a half minutes, and then there's this like extended outro. So either way, an epic tune, there's no doubt. But what are your thoughts about like ending an album with a 24-minute song after what's, everything that's come before this is kind of dense, and they go out with they really went for broke on this one.
I think it was like, it reminded me of like a almost doubled in size version of Song of Myself from the previous album, where like the end of the song is like a lot of dialogue, and it's just a very ambitious song, and I think this one's even more so. But man, I gotta say, like, I almost made this the song of the week, but I chickened out because I didn't want to have to pick a minute of a 25-minute song. But it really like it starts out this beautiful piano solo, and it's really like a lesson in patience, because it just starts out slow. It gets picking up. There's some big hits, big orchestra hits with the guitars, but then it kind of pulls back a little bit. And then this is broken into five parts. So this beginning part is just really this very like slow build, slow burn to get into it. And there's like horns and like it's beautifully orchestrated. It takes about almost 6 minutes before like it really kicks in, and you get some of the dialogue, which a lot of the song is revolves around the dialogue and the story, which is like life and evolution by natural selection, which is Richard Dawkins has a book called The Greatest Show on Earth, where I think a lot of this song's themes derive from. There's quotes spoken from the first chapter of Unweaving the Rainbow by Dawkins, and then at the end, like I'd mentioned before, there's closing thoughts from On the Origin of Species by Charles Darwin. So it's a very, like, at least thematically, a very like deep song. Man, I think this is such a great tune. It's like you hate for a band to like bust out like a 17-minute song live, because it's like shit that could have been like 4 really good songs or whatever. But this is just one of those songs where it's like, you know what, I'm just gonna strap in and just enjoy it, because it's just so friggin' epic. And there's so many great parts to it, and I think Floor's performance is fantastic. Marco's got an awesome part. The end of it, and by the end of it, I mean the end of the like musical part of it before it kind of devolves into more dialogue, is just so epic. Epic is really the word of the day with this song. Just an amazing tune. There's a part of it that's almost like this kind of like short trip through time with like excerpts from like old classical songs and Enter Sandman, like the riff from Enter Sandman, and Tibetan chant. Like it's really just such a fascinating tune. This is what Human Nature was missing. Like there was so much like, I don't know how to explain exactly what was going on there, but like you can make a song long and long-winded like this one, and it can be interesting and enjoyable throughout, which I think this one completely serves. And then it just goes out with like this really beautiful orchestrated outro that is perfect for the band, like wrapping up their shows, like doing their bows and everything. I mean, this is a tremendous tune. I think that like, you started it off with like this absolute banger with Shudder Before the Beautiful, but you end it with like this absolutely like daunting, like epic, just, I don't know. It's just amazing. I'm such a big fan of this song. And this is the song I think I struggled with the most when I first heard the album, because there's just so much of it. But now it's easy listening for me. Sit down, Michael Bolton.
The narration on this could have killed it, but it doesn't annoy me. And I'll give credit for that, because they really could have destroyed this with the wrong narrator, but it actually works quite well. I think the song lacks a little bit of cohesion. And it's just kind of
do you know why that's the case? Because they got Richard Dawkins to do the narration.
Well, then that makes all the sense in the world, because the reality is this is like a patchwork of really good ideas, but somehow some of these parts are just absolutely phenomenal. Others kind of just thrown in there. I don't know that it needed to be as long as it is, but the parts that are good, and there are a lot of them, are really, really beautiful. And some parts are heavier than others, but it's an epic sounding song. And the chorus, which permeates parts of this tune, is infectious. And so it is a really ambitious way to go out. But when you can, and this is the biggest compliment I can give it, there are sections of this song, even towards the middle, that actually remind me of like old After Forever stuff. And I was hooked from that point on. So I think there's a little bit of a cohesion issue, but by and large, it's a song that I enjoy thoroughly. And that kind of puts a cap on this very meaty album that clocks in at 78 minutes. I mean, this is there is no shortage of material on this thing. I have no doubt you're going to rate it higher than I am, but I'm curious how high this kind of goes for you on the scale of 1 to 10.
Before I tell you, I will mention I listened to, there's, at least to my knowledge, there's one B-side, and it's a instrumental song called, of all things, Sagan.
Huh.
You could probably imagine who that song was named after, but, it was a B-side on the, Endless Form single. And I feel like it would have bloated the album had it been included in the main album. It's a nice tune, but I don't think it was necessary. So I just thought I would put that out there. But if you're a big fan of instrumental Nightwish tunes and you've never heard this song, I suggest you give it a listen, because it's musicians being great musicians, to put it frankly. So I want to pull a couple of quotes from people that are better at quoting things or saying things than I am before I give you my score, because I think there's some good quotes from some reviewers on this album. Craig Hartranft, who's the founder of Danger Dog Music Reviews, he said that the album was pretty darn terrific, and he described it as the Nightwish you know and love. Breathtaking arrangements paired with massive orchestration and beautiful vocals. And then Music Review Radar wrote that on this album, Nightwish evolved to their own personal and original style, leaving him craving for their next album. Probably
until he got it.
Yeah, I wonder what he thought about the next album. But and I really like this quote. This was from the review team at Ultimate Guitar, and they said that the album needs several hearings to be fully understood, but it's probably the most complete, well-written album in Nightwish's catalog, which is very high praise. They said they considered The Greatest Show on Earth to be a pretentious title, but closer to the truth than Nightwish has ever been before. So really high praise. You know what? I really need to look at what I gave the previous Nightwish album. So I gave Oceanborn a 9.5. I gave Imaginarium a 9.875. Damn. I'm not going to rate this as high as those two albums as much as I like it, but I will give it a 9. I like this album a lot. I think that the tracks that you don't like as much are the tracks that kind of drag it down for me from it being a 10 or a perfect album, but it's still a very good album. And like I said before, it makes my, wanting to give Human Nature like a 7 or a 7.5, like all the more disappointing, because it just, there shouldn't be any 7.5 Nightwish albums. They should all be 8.5s or higher, or in my case, 9s. This is the lowest score I've given a Nightwish album so far. And I've purposely chosen, albums, 3 albums by each of the different singers, because I think that it's important to kind of, pay attention to like all of these eras, because they're all important. God knows, I don't know what the next album will do is going to be. Now it could really be just about anything. Maybe we'll do the new album when it comes out. That could be interesting. But I assume that I kind of had a feeling going into this that this was going to be one of those episodes where our scores are fairly spread far apart, because we're usually in the ballpark, but I feel like this one might skew a little bit further apart than usual.
This just doesn't compare to the other 2 albums as far as I'm concerned, but it's better than I remembered. If you would have asked me going into the week, I would have said maybe it's a 6.75, and it's not. It's markedly better than that. It's a 7.5 for me, but that's because I also know that Human Nature would probably not even be a 6. Like, I don't know where it would be, but I didn't enjoy that album at all. And I tried and I tried and I tried again. I just never got there. But suffice to say, this is a good album. I just don't know that I would put it up there with the upper echelon albums from this band's fantastic discography. So, but I'm happy that you chose it, because I don't know that I would have ever gone back to it but for you selecting it. So it forced me to really give it a bunch of listens, and I thank you for that.
My fear with this band is that they peaked with Imaginarium and then this, and then it's kind of like now we're on I'm hoping I'm wrong, but I feel like now we're kind of heading down the mountain. And
without Marco, it's possible. And I'll say this: this is a really critical album for the band, because if they come out with a stinker, they're going to lose a lot of people, because they're going to say that's 2 in a row potentially. I'm not going to waste time or money on a third. So I really, they gotta come. I'm not saying they have to hit a home run, but they got to hit at least a double with the next album.
I don't know though. Do you think that their popularity is really going to suffer? Like, I feel like the more critical fans like us are probably going to be critical. I mean, just to put
I don't think they're getting
frankly,
new fans if they come out with Human Nature Part 2.
Yeah, but I don't know that they're going to lose that many fans either. Like, I don't know. Like, they're not going to lose me as a fan. Like, I'll be honest and say, like, I don't like this as much, but like, I don't know. You know what? I was going to listen to Human Nature again today after Endless Forms, and then I forgot and didn't. Cause I haven't listened to it since the year it came out, and I'm curious to see like it's just such a mystery to me why, like, I just can't grab onto it. I don't know what it is about it. I still think it's a good album. I just think that I'm not here to listen to good Nightwish albums.
Fair enough. But that puts a bow on it. I would love to do the new album when it comes out. I'm hoping it's a redeemer in many ways. But a couple of news items before I reveal next week's album. Number 1, Mike Tramp, White Lions singer, has announced summer and fall tour dates here in the U.S. He's starting August 23rd in Las Vegas, coming all the way back east to Teaneck, New Jersey at the end of September. We talked about how we enjoy doing some of these classic 80s glam or hair metal bands. We got to do a White Lion episode. That's why I just wanted to mention the Mike Tramp tour dates. That'll be great. By all accounts, I know people that have seen him live in recent years, and he is still just a fantastic singer. So something to check out or something to consider. I want to let you know about this. I thought this was interesting. Pearl Jam's Stone Gossard said, quote, "Heavy metal changed my life." And when he talked about some of, I guess, the more influential albums that he was kind of referencing, not only was it the first couple of Iron Maiden albums, but he mentioned Merciful Fate's The Oath, which I thought was just fantastic, because Lord knows I didn't hear that on 10, but interesting that he was such a metal fan in his younger days.
Yeah, it's always interesting to hear that these like alt guys were metalheads growing up. A lot of interviews I've heard with like punk bands were like, we wanted to play metal, but we just weren't good enough musicians, so we played punk instead.
There you go.
Like, it's just, we grew up listening to Maiden and Priest, but we, grew old and played Sum 41 instead.
Yeah,
so
there you go.
It's interesting. Although it would be, I would love to hear Pearl Jam explore their metal roots a little bit. For me, I think that would be a lot of fun. Although I have to say, their new album that came out recently last month, probably my favorite Pearl Jam album in the last almost 20 years, I would say. Probably since the self-titled from 06. I really like it a lot.
Yeah, it's got its moments for sure. I definitely enjoyed it as well. I don't know that they're ever going to hit some of the stuff that they did in the early to mid 90s, but a step in the right direction for sure and an enjoyable listen. Just two more things I wanted to mention. Amorphous announced Tales from the Thousand Lakes, basically a live album and film from their album, by the same name. It's funny. This is widely considered one of the best in their catalog, although I would argue it sounds nothing like the material that would come after it. But interesting that they're going back and basically playing this entire album in its entirety. And I think it's just, we talk about bands that just don't touch some of that earlier material in their catalog. Well, Amorphous going in the other direction and playing all of Tales from a Thousand Lakes live. So good for them. I'd like to hear this when it comes out. I think the album suffers from a little bit of poor production, but at the same time, they would become one of the most consistent bands around, and I look forward to seeing them in Atlanta in just a few months.
Oh, I'm so excited to hear them play in that venue. Like, I think it's going to be really good. I'm pretty pumped for that, and I was excited when they were announced. It's coming up, man. We got less than 4 months to go, and I have not even begun listening to anything really. I mean, hell, they haven't even announced all the bands yet, so. I know what I'm excited about now, but you never know like what will excite me on the way. So it's exciting times. Summer is coming, and not to be confused with winter is coming, which we used to say before they ruined the show with the final season. I'm sidebarring a little bit, but I'm glad. I really enjoyed talking about this album with you. I just again, going back to getting to go to that show with you, I'm so glad that you asked me to go to that, because it was just to be able to see them on that first show of that tour with Flora and Troy, like officially in the band, and Kai's first time on drums, hearing songs performed for the first time, hearing songs performed for the first time in many years, like Sleeping Sun and Stargazers. That was a really great time, and I have to say, I've seen Nightwish a handful of times now, and I would have a hard time ranking my favorite concerts I've ever seen. It would just be, there's too many of them. It would be very hard, but I will say that at least 2 or 3 of them are Nightwish concerts, and that one was definitely one of them. So
there you go. I can't disagree. And this, like I said, the material came off great live. I've got one other news item, and it's interesting in a couple of ways. Longtime Evergrey drummer Jonas Ekdahl has left the band. He has been with the band as long as I remember. And it's interesting that on the heels of this new album, which is getting positive press by just about everyone, including yourself, with the singles that you've heard, that the drummer would leave the band. It's kind of a loss. He's synonymous with the band in many ways. And I just thought it was interesting that here they are about to put out new material, and he is just saying, quote, the lack of passion for playing live is the reason for his decision. So he's out of the band.
Good. The band finally gets good, and this guy takes off.
Well, it's funny you mention that, because after 200 episodes and change, we're going to do some Evergrey next week. We're going to cover The Inner Circle, which came out 20 years ago last month. So we're celebrating a 20th anniversary of this album. And although it's not my favorite album, it is one that I want to talk about. And so you're going to get stuck listening to some Jonas Ekdahl on drums as we cover The Inner Circle from 2004. I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. At the same time, I have some strong thoughts about this particular album, but the time was right for some Evergrey, and the time was right for this particular album.
If you don't mind going into it, like right now instead of next week, what made you choose this album of all the Evergrey albums?
2 reasons. Number one, the anniversary, right? 20 years. I thought it was timely. Number two, it's an album that I've always struggled with myself because everything that came before this I was a huge fan of. And then there was a period of 3 albums that came out after this, which I did not enjoy. Like, I truly just didn't enjoy a bunch of Evergrey albums. And then eventually I think they found their groove about 2 or 3 albums ago. But there was a real lull for this band where I just could not listen to them. And this was the album where people raved about this album and then criticized the following release. They lost me with this one, but for a couple of songs. And I wanted to go back to it, not only because it's been 20 years, but because I must have been missing something, because I feel like, given the praise, this is something I would have enjoyed. And this was coming on the heels of Recreation Day and In Search of Truth, 2 albums which I hold in extremely high regard. So it's time. It's time to do some Evergrey. And I didn't want to go with a ground ball that I thought was going to be, an easy 9.5 for me. So I wanted to go with something a little more challenging for myself.
Cool. This is, man, I can't believe we've not done an episode. We talk about this band all the time, and we haven't done a full album. So I'm actually looking forward to this. My thoughts about Evergrey have definitely changed over the years, especially with the newer material really resonating with me. And so I'm hoping that, much like I've done with Pain of Salvation and Devin Townsend, who, when they played at Prague Power 3, I just was the shrug emoji, basically, before emojis were a thing. And now I'm a big fan of both of those bands. I'm hoping that Evergrey can kind of complete the trifecta of the 3 question mark bands for me that have always been like Prague Power favorites, but I just never quite understood. I'm getting there with Evergrey, so this will be good. It'll help move me along. So nice choice.
Thank you. So thanks to all of our Patreon members. If you like what you hear, you're not a fan of our Patreon or a member of our Patreon, please give us a like and a follow. We look forward to bringing you more metal next week, and then we've got some nice surprises in store in June. So enjoy the week, my friend. I know you've got some stuff to do this evening, so I will let you go. We're going a little bit long, but I look forward to chatting with you again soon as we finally do some Evergrey after 210 episodes or whatever it's been.
Yeah, I have to check with Caleb and see if this was the album that changed his life, but I'll save that story for next week.
Excellent. I look forward to it. Enjoy the weekend, my friend. I will catch up with you soon.
All right, take care, buddy.